In case you missed it, here's a Sports Animal Rewind.
Why don't we start previewing the Alabama Crimson Tide and put an eye on the SEC? The undisputed best conference.
Champions of the college football world.
The fans. The talent.
I know one thing, the SEC just got a little tougher.
The University of Tennessee.
Details, small details.
Let's put an eye on the SEC. And for that, we bring in friend of the show from BamaOnline.com, the Alabama team site on the 24/7 Sports Network. Travis Reier joins us here on the new Sentinel Sports Page. Travis, Vince, and Evan in Knoxville. How you doing, Travis?
What's up, fellas? How have you guys been?
We're good. How you been?
I'm doing great. Can't complain.
Yeah? And real quick, Travis, I got to ask you, tell people about the special kicker in the Reier family that's getting it done on the high school level. Tell everyone about your youngin'.
Yeah, she is doing pretty well, Vince.
How about
she
that?
Is, Savannah, she's a sophomore in high school and has made 4 of 6 field goals this year, including 1 from 38 yards, 2 from 37, and been really good on her extra points, too. So football team needed a kicker. She's got a pretty extensive soccer background. She's got a couple of 3 family members that maybe kicked in their previous lives, so they've kind of chipped in and helped her. But it's been a lot of fun, no doubt, and I think she's really enjoyed it. And it's created a little bit of excitement. And the most important thing is they're 7-1 on the season and looking like they're going to make the postseason. So it's been a lot of fun all the way around.
And very well accepted by teammates and classmates, right?
Yeah, no doubt. Her teammates, I think, were a little bit unsure at first, but I think the big thing has been that she's proven that she can handle her job, and I think they respect that. And it's been fun to kind of watch that part of it. They've become protective of her, if anything else. If she gets touched, they seem to respond pretty quickly.
Outstanding. Love to hear that. Travis Reier from BamaOnline.com joining us here, covers the Alabama Crimson Tide. And Travis, obviously there are some moments of concern for some Bama fans, for maybe some uglier type of moments, things you weren't used to seeing, Texas A&M and the offensive line and things like that, the defensive concerns. But are they ramping up? Is that their most complete game this past Saturday against Arkansas?
I think it was, and you can look at the last 3 or 4 opponents and point to the level of competition and certainly make a valid argument that they haven't seen the best on their schedule. I don't think anybody could really argue that, but there's teams that go through Friday walkthroughs, Vince, without being able to avoid a penalty, and they went an entire game last Saturday night against Arkansas without a flag and without giving up a sack or giving up a point on the defensive side. So, perfection is elusive, especially in college football, but that was as close to a perfect game as you'll see from a team, and it'll be interesting to see if they can continue it. The offense does appear as if it's ramping up, as if it needed to, but Amari Cooper's coming along, and the two-headed tandem at running back seems to be developing nicely with Yeldon and Drake. So that offensive line has been a little bit more cohesive in the last 4 or 5 games, and I think that's showing up in their all-around performance too.
Travis, I asked this question last hour, and you look at Alabama's schedule this year, and the only game that was even close was the Texas A&M game. I know that was kind of an unusual game, but does that game offer any kind of lessons for Tennessee or anyone else that will face, or was it just an unusual anomaly early in the season?
Well, it's hard to replicate Johnny Manziel, first of all, and then he has a 6'5" wide receiver, as we saw again last Saturday, who is an absolute monster to try to handle. But I think some of the same things are in play for Alabama this week. When you look back on that game, and specifically that corner spot opposite Dion Ballou, that was the guys actually, because they rotated corners in that A&M game. that Mike Evans really took advantage of with Johnny Manziel throwing the deep ball to him against man coverage. So they played 3 different guys against Arkansas with the starters after Bradley Sills went down with an ankle sprain in that game. And you still wonder if they have anything figured out at that corner. They could start their 4th different guy at that position this week, and that's unusual for a Saban team. Usually the corner spot may have new faces at the start of the year under Saban, as you guys know, but typically by the 7th, 8th game of the year, they're pretty set on who that guy is, and they're not quite at that point. So whoever gets the start at that corner, I suspect Tennessee will check under his hood, not only in the passing game, but I think you'll see some runs going that way as well.
Learning about the opponent for Tennessee on Saturday, Alabama, with Travis Reier from BamaOnline.com, part of the 24/7 Sports Network, the Alabama team site here on the new Sentinel Sports Page. Vince Ferrara and Evan Woodbery. Certainly the last name Sunseri is very familiar with people around here. It didn't go well for Sal in his 1 year at defensive coordinator at Tennessee, but Vinny's has had a unbelievable career at Alabama, and he is out for the year now. How significant is the loss of Vinny Sunseri for Alabama?
Well, I think from an intangible standpoint, it's very big because he brings a spirit and enthusiasm to the defensive side of the ball that not many guys can match. And his understanding of the defense is unsurpassed, unmatched, really. He not only understands what he needs to do at safety, he understands what everybody on the field needs to do, the alignments and the checks and making those calls in the secondary. So that falls on Clinton Dix now, who they're very fortunate to have gotten back when they did late last week, because when Sunseri went down in the first quarter, they were able to plug Clinton Dix right back in the lineup to go with Landon Collins. And I think Vinny's underrated as far as his playmaking skills. This is a guy who had 2 interception returns for touchdowns this year and was doing a good job in coverage. Also an effective blitzer. Again, though, Collins and Clinton Dix are plenty talented enough to handle it, but now with Sunseri out, they're down a couple of safeties, so it brings depth into the picture a little bit more.
Travis, I know some people are already penciling it Alabama in Atlanta or even beyond that, but games against LSU and maybe even Auburn, which might be interesting. But is there an area of this team that could be kind of the kryptonite for Alabama? Is there one area that you think is exploitable or that needs to get better if Alabama is going to reach its goal of a national championship?
I would say at this point, we talked about it earlier, is perhaps their ability to defend the pass in the back 7 with the injuries at safety. They get against a team that can spread the field a little bit, like an LSU, with a quarterback who can make throws like Zach Mettenberger can on occasion. They could find themselves in a tough spot against receivers of LSU's quality with the questions at that one corner. And again, when they go to their sub packages now defensively, especially the dime, they're going to be rolling Geno Smith, a capable player, but that's not the trio that they had prior to Sunseri's injury and Clinton Dix's suspension. So, I think that's probably the biggest concern right now, and otherwise it's really up to Alabama. I mean, the offense appears to be hitting another gear. The kicking game has been the best they've had under Saban. They've scored 3 different ways in the kicking game this year. Cade Foster, their place kicker's 8 of 9 on field goals. Cody Mandel's averaging 46.7 yards a punt, which is a Saban-era high for punters at Alabama. So from that standpoint, they've been outstanding. But those 2 aforementioned areas are really what it's going to come down to. Pass coverage, I think, and then Alabama dealing with the expectations on a weekly basis.
Travis, let me follow up on that because that was my next question. With the expectations, with the bar being so high, how much do you think the fear of failure factors into the motivation for Alabama?
Well, I think it drives Nick Saban each and every day. I don't even think it's so much about the success, because you'll hear him talk the day after a BCS championship game that he needs to get on the recruiting trail ASAP. And I don't think that goes back to the thrill of victory. That goes back to that fear or that anxiety that comes with being on top of the mountain and wanting to stay there. So I think that drives him as much as anything. And I think he's constantly providing his team with reminders that on any given Saturday you can be beat. And that's why I think Tennessee beating South Carolina last Saturday was a huge benefit for Alabama. Not only for this week, but it happened early enough in the day that I can almost guarantee you that Saban mentioned it to his team in the pregame before Arkansas. So he is, I'm sure, very happy with what happened at Neyland Stadium on last Saturday, because it's given him plenty of ammo to command his team's attention throughout the last 4 or 5 days.
I know you watch and follow the entire league, and you pointed out on Twitter a crazy stat yesterday that Butch Jones is the 4th different Tennessee coach to take a team to Tuscaloosa in the last 4 trips. You had Fulmer in 07, Kiffin in 09, Dooley in 11, and now Butch Jones in 2013. What do you think of Butch Jones and Tennessee from what you've been able to see so far?
Well, the last 2 weeks have been last 2 games, I guess, have been extremely impressive, because I've seen first-year coaches in this league have teams lose a game like Tennessee lost it to Georgia and not be able to get them to recover. Alabama even went through that, Vince, if you remember, in 2007 with Saban.
Mm-hmm.
Lost a tough game in early November to LSU that season and didn't win a game the rest of the month. And that includes Louisiana Monroe. So for Tennessee to be able to rebound off the bye week and come back and win, not only win, but win late against South Carolina, tells me that there's some buy-in going on with those players, and as far as his approach and his program in general. And that's extremely encouraging, I would think, if you're a Tennessee fan.
You hit on a couple of things in terms of scheme and potential type of matchups that maybe Tennessee might try to throw against that second corner for Alabama, maybe even run to them. What are some other X's and O's or schemes things from both standpoints, from both teams, that you might expect to maybe play out in this game?
I think for Alabama, it's just going to be more of what they like to do, and that's come out and really try to establish balance between run pass, and kind of see what Tennessee's going to give them. It's been a mix, really, the last 2 seasons. Some teams have come out and loaded the box and still dared A.J. McCarron to beat them, and he's been able to do that for the most part, while others have played cover 2 and said, we're going to try to stop the run with 6 guys or 7 guys. And it's hard to say, because every week it changes, it seems. And if you hear Alabama players talk, it's almost like they always get an entirely different look from an opponent than what they've seen on film. So, Alabama has the luxury with their skill talent and a veteran quarterback to be able to be patient and stick with who they are. Because they also know on the other side of the ball they've got one of the very best defenses in college football. So, I'll be interested to see if Tennessee comes out really aggressive. And I think as good as Justin Worley has been the last couple of games for them, he's going to have to make some plays. Because I think Neal is a very good back, and the running game is looking to be improved. But you can't be one-dimensional and beat Alabama, especially if your quarterback doesn't have the ability to make plays with his legs. So really it'll come down to, I think, for Tennessee, that passing game, and can they continue to take steps with Worley and those receivers.
How do you think Alabama will go after Worley? Will they rush with their guys up front, out of their defense with their linemen? Will they blitz a lot? How do you expect them to attack and get pressure on the quarterback?
Yeah, you you know as well as anybody that Saban is going to give you a nice strong mix, and you know I think they'll probably man up a lot until they see that Tennessee's wide receivers can hurt him and come after him a good bit on, especially on possession downs. I don't think they're going to let him sit back there and you know, have time to kind of process things, especially if they don't believe that Tennessee's wide receivers can get off man coverage and make plays. So that's going to be critical for Tennessee, I think, early in the game, is prove that those guys can get it done against Alabama's corners and nickel guy to help Worley out and then be able to maybe run the ball a little bit too.
Travis, last thing with the Amari Cooper, seems like he's coming around. Why wasn't he as productive early on, and is he back, or is he close to being to the form he was last year?
Yeah, he had a toe injury in fall camp, and he was really putting up numbers in preseason scrimmages when it happened. And it just seemed to set him back. And, those things are awful for running backs and wide receivers especially. And it just seemed to linger. I think mentally it probably affected him a little bit too. Guys respond to those things in different ways. And at the same time, they have the luxury of having the kind of depth they have at wide receiver, which meant they didn't have to put a rush on getting him back. While he was out, DeAndrew White, who had a knee injury last year and missed half the season, was outstanding at that X receiver spot. You still got Kevin Norwood, still got Kenny Bell. They've got a tight end now in O.J. Howard that brings a different dimension to the passing game. So between all those options, they've had the luxury of kind of allowing Cooper to come back at his own pace. Now, the last couple of games, he's been much more involved, been targeting him a good bit more. Had his first touchdown catch of the season last Saturday, which is hard to imagine, but it speaks to the depth they have at that position that it kind of went unnoticed that it took him 7 games to make his first touchdown grab. So, he looks to be getting there. And, you add him again to the top of that rotation, and it takes that offense to another level.
One more quick thing, Travis. I appreciate your time. The offensive line has been criticized a lot. How do you think the offensive line is playing right now?
Well, when you look at the running game over the last 14 quarters, I think they've rushed for 1,050 yards in the last 3.5 games. That's pretty much, I guess, right around 320 a game or so. So, with the injury of Ryan Kelly at center in that Ole Miss game, they were forced to put Chad Lindsey in the lineup, a redshirt junior at center, and for whatever reason, whether it's better communication, whether it's Lindsey being a little more stout, a little heavier than Kelly, who's a little bit undersized, they have flourished in his time over the ball. So, Kelly is supposedly full go this week, so that'll be an interesting storyline for Saturday is, do they continue to go with Lindsey at center with all the success they've had, or do they revert back to the guy that started the season at the position?